Hey guys, welcome back. So this is just the explanation for this project here, and as you can see right now, this project is actually contains the following. Let me just go into the project directory. So this project was built using just different technology. Sorry, it was built using React.js, a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It also has a database called PostgreSQL, which is used in storing those data when user register and some other stuff behind the scenes. And the backend is actually done using Node.js. So Node.js is actually a runtime environment built on top of Chrome, Google V8 JavaScript engine, which allows us to, which enables us to use JavaScript for the server side of any language. Okay, so and also we are also making use of this library called Notype. So as you can see right here, if I click on sign in, you see this little notification right up here. It says officer that this little toast notification, this is made possible through this library. So once I click on fire now, you will actually see it up here. So let me just look at the left hand side, or let's say right hand side top. Because this is what is happening behind the scene of that site here. So this library is responsible for displaying those notifications. As you can see, it says it was a minimalistic JavaScript library for those notifications, responsive, whatever they say here, and dependency free and tiny, which is 3 kilobytes for storage. So I'm going to be leaving this link to you guys so you guys can go out and check it out yourself. Notype. Then we also have Node.js. We'll copy out this link and leave it for you guys to go through when you're less busy. And React. So I'm going to be doing things. I'm going to be explaining the whole project once and for all together, but not deep down, not like going to deep down of every single component and stuff like that. I'm going to explain the core feature for this application here. So you guys will be the one to do the research on your own. Let me just go like this. Okay, so I'll be sending in this link once I'm done with you guys. So so as you can see right here, this is actually done using the React for building client-side apps. So I'm going to start with the front-end part before I move into the back-end. So as you can see right here, we have different project setup, and I actually explained all this to you. So I won't be going over it again. So if you need explanation, I sent you guys a link. Sorry, a documentation, which I told you to go through. So I sent you guys this documentation, not this. I sent you guys this where I explain the project structure for this application here. So if you go into the documentation here, you find that you're going to look for you're going to see that up there. So let's scroll down a bit. Let's bring this like this. So this is it here. I explained this within this document. I explained all this stuff within it, so I won't be going over it again. So you guys should go ahead and check that out. Then lastly, so I'll be going into different, or just to rewind this again. All this stuff which you are seeing here, they are what make up this project itself. So let's look at this. First of all, the node modules. The node modules, I told you guys not to go into here, going to this particular folder. As you can see, it contains like thousands of files and folders within this application here. So this application needs all this. So what makes this application function well? Because of this node modules folder here. So each time each of these dependencies, each of these packages are installed. For example, each of these dependencies are installed. All this stuff, they rely on, or whenever all this installed, whenever each of these packages or modules are installed, they come with other dependencies too. So that is where all this stuff are here. All these things which you see here depend on whatever you see here too, and also the React app also. So if you go into to the public folder like this is actually the, like, all I call it, the main function, the main root, sorry, not function, the main root of this application here. While this app.js is the main application here, this is the starting point for this our app here. So I'm going to go over this. So the public for the contains index.html, logo, and some other stuff. So this index.html is what React renders out when this page gets loaded here. So it looks for this particular tag, a div with an ID of root, and inject whatever we have within this app.js here. So if you come in here, you can see it says what it's imported app from this particular file here. Then it renders it out within that particular tag, having an ID of roots. So all this stuff are being injected into this ID. So if you go into, if you look at the source code for this particular project, let's look at it there. Go into elements. By the way, if you're wondering how I did that, you can simply right click on the desktop and click on inspect. So it opens the inspect elements. As you can see right here, this is the root of our application, the root folder. This is the root of this application. So it injects whatever we have in here, all this stuff here. Like now for this signing page, it's actually injected both the form and these images here, just as you can see, the form and the image here. So this two stuff which are highlighted in the browser, they are made possible using that particular tag here, this stuff here, policy here. So if you want more info about it, you can simply go over the links I'm going to send you guys. So that's for that. So right now, this app.js is actually the entry point for our application. It contains so many other bunch of stuff within this here. So I'm going to open some link also for you guys to go through. Let's look at React router. React router. So as I'm going to go over this, let me just copy out the link of this. So when you come into this application, so let me just sign in for a minute now. Let me sign in. Okay, sorry, that's the wrong password. Let's look at this. Are you sure? Let's look at that. So when you sign up as a, let me just clear this off. Let me just clear this stuff. Now from now to go over this stuff again. So when you sign up now for this particular application, or when you sign in, you can see that you can move into different section of this page. You can move into different location of this page here, different sections and stuff, some other stuff. Now what goes behind this stuff is mainly for this library here. So what this library does is that it enables you move from one route to another, move from one location to another. Normally for you to do this using JavaScript, you have to go into you have to do so many configuration for you to add this routing feature into any application with bare vanilla JavaScript. But with this application here, with this React router application here, it enables us to add more routing feature to our app. So let's say the user wants to go into assign pages here, assign cases page here, we can simply declare that up here using the router as a wrapper, followed by the route also as the child wrapper. Then whatever routes we need to apply in here, so we can simply specify specify the path and what component should show up here. So right now, when they go into assign cases here, when they go into localhost slash officer slash assign cases here, this particular component gets rendered. But right now, by making this component will only get shown if actually the user is actually logged in. So when they are logged in, this component will show, else this particular component would show, which is the signing page here, or the signing in component here. So the signing component contains this form which you saw here. So this is what the signing component contains here. It contains this form which you saw within this particular form. That's what this particular component contains here. So this particular library here help us to add more routing features to our application. And by the way, routing is the movement from one location to another. Let's go ahead. So all this stuff which was a split, I won't go over this. I'll just leave a link for you guys to check it, because if you want me to go over this video will actually get have a longer duration, because I have something else to do. So I'll just explain the core features. So let's go into the sign-in page here. When you go into the sign-in page, simply go into move into pages. Then let's go for the auth. The auth contains the sign-in and sign-up page here. So for the signing in page here, right now, normally for a bare application, you're meant to see HTML and some other stuff here. All these things which you see here are called JSX. So they simply means JavaScript syntax extension. They enable you write in HTML like syntax, but in React they are called JSX. So if you go over into the React documentation, let's look for JSX. So if we go, let us wait for this stuff to load. And I also explained the difference between a normal bare HTML and a JSX like symbol here, syntax. So I explained all this stuff up within the documentation, so you guys can check it out. And also explain the router, what goes on behind the scenes with the router, and also some other stuff within it. So let me just go back. Click on JSX. So as you can see here, it says this foreign tag syntax is neither string nor HTML. Like I said before, it is called JSX, and it is a syntax extension to JavaScript. We recommend using it with React to describe what the UI should look like. JSX may remind you of a template language, but it comes with the full power of JavaScript. JSX produces React elements. We will explore rendering them to DOM and some other stuff in the next session. So you can go over this link. I want to leave this for you guys to go over it yourself. So what that page is trying to tell you is that in React we don't use HTML here. We make use of JSX like syntax. But this JSX like syntax looks like an HTML tags and so on. For example, we have the div, we have the h3, but actually this is actually JSX here, and the reason is that in the HTML here we don't have class name as an attribute, but in React we make use of what class name, which is this here. In HTML we make use of class, not class name, and in React we can't. So in HTML we don't have components or a tag having this sort of syntax here, or a link tag. We don't have this here. So in React here we make use of JSX in order to render out UI from the into the browser here. So I want to leave this stuff for you guys to go through. So right now we are simply rendering out this particular two components, which is the form and the image here. The form and the image is placed on two different rows here, 1 and 2. column 1, column 2 here. So that's the reason why I separated it out for you guys to see it. This is where the form contains the left and the right hand side here. So it contains this sign in and the input form and other stuff, and then the button here. This button is actually a custom component which I created in order for me to create custom button for myself. So as you can see here, this is actually JSX, not HTML here. So let's look at this. Let's go on. So when the user clicks on sign in, what happens? First of all, let's look at this particular function here. When the user clicks on sign in, once a click happens on this form here, once the user clicks on this form here, a function gets executed, and we define that using the onClick event. The onClick handler event takes a function as an argument here. So this function will only get executed once this particular button gets clicked on. So let's look at this function here. So if you scroll up and search for handle click, it shows up this what function here. So let's look at this. Let's look at this function first of all. So the function, what it does is that it actually checks if actually these two fields are empty. When they are empty, it shows an error message to the user using that library, that Notype library for displaying those notification to the user. So it's either display an error message or actually a success message. But in this case, once this particular inputs are empty, it shows up an error message here. So we simply checks if the user password is empty. Else, if it's empty, we simply throw an error message. So let's see what's going on. Right now, the password field is empty. So let's click on sign in. It says what password is required. This is what is actually happening here. So and also with the email too. Then what we need to do right now, we actually created an object. The object contains the information we want to send to the backend here. But before we send this particular stuff to the backend, let's look at where these two functions here, this new class instance and also this notification instance here. So these two stuff, this instance, they are coming from a file called $/helpers/util.js file here. So the reason why we did this is that we are simply adding what we call directory listing feature. So right now we're actually in this particular file, and this file is within a folder called auth. The auth folder contains these two files, and what we need to access a file outside this folder. So what we need to do is that we need to come out of this folder twice, because right now when we come out once from this folder, we will be left with this page folder, and we know that this auth folder is within this pages folder here. So we need to come out twice from this folder here, one step above and also one step above. So when we come out, we're going to land ourselves within this source folder here. The source folder contains some other folders, some other subfolders like the API route, assets and components, context and helpers. But what we need is the file which we are looking for is actually found in the helpers folder here, which is called util.js here. So we need to come out of this app.js. We need to come out from this file here. Let's look at this. Sorry, not this app.js. Let's look at auth. Let's print this. So we need to come out from this folder here, two step above, then go into the helpers folder, then access the file here. So the file, this is what you're actually seeing here. So this particular file contains different class instances, class declarations, sorry, and we are exporting them. So what you see here is we import some other libraries called, we import the JWT decode library, we imported Notype library, and we also declared the class instance for this notification here. So what this, you need to know JavaScript to get to understand what all this is. So we simply declare two classes, which is what the notification class and the UT class. The UT class contains some sub methods, which is actually used for some certain logic within our application here. So what we did is that we declared some of these methods here, like is logged in, to check if actually the user is logged in, validate phone number, validate email, validate matrix number, and all this won't be used. It was actually from a template which I used last time. So this is actually not used within this folder here. So validate plate number, all this stuff is not actually meant to be here. Random images, send JSON, redirect, and some other stuff. So let's look at the validate phone number first of all, or the validate email. So the validate email makes use of what we call regular expression, or in short, regex. We make use of regex to validate the email. So all this stuff, they are actually what checks if actually the email which the user provides is correct or not. So if you are this is not random values, they are called regular expression. So let's look at that. Let's look for that within this regular expression JavaScript. So let's look at this. So as you can see, it says what a regular expression is a sequence of characters that forms a search patterns. The search patterns can be used for text search and text replace operations. It says a regular expression is a sequence of characters that forms a search pattern. When you search for data in a text, you can use this search pattern to describe what you are searching for. So right now we are simply searching for a valid email address. We know that a valid email address must contain a @ symbol, but before the @ symbol, it must contain some other characters like numbers and letters. So we simply check for all this here. We check for an @ symbol. We also check for the domain specific symbol here, which is either .com, .mail, or other stuff, .gmail.com, and some other stuff. Then so this is actually what we are simply searching for. Right now, if you need explanation on this, you can simply refer to this link here. So I'm going to leave this for you guys to go through. We simply search for the email here. So we simply check if actually the email is valid. So right now, this particular method takes in an email as a parameter. So the email as a parameter, simply we are telling this methods to accept a valid email address. So when we accept a valid email address, we can simply then validate the request, or sorry, validate the text or string. So we check simply if the user provides an email. If they don't, we simply return false, which will stop executing every operation down below here. So if the user provides an email address from the client, we simply split the email into different parts here. So let me show you what I mean. So when we go into this console tab here, we simply let's type abc@mail.com. So we want to check for this @ symbol here. We want to validate this first character and the second character here. So we can simply split this. And what I mean by split, we simply the split method in JavaScript actually split a text into a substring of an array. So let's look at this split. So we simply split it by the @ symbol here. As you can see, we get these two subarrays, substrings within an array. We get the ABC and the mail.com stuff like this. So that's what we're actually doing here. We split it, then we simply check if actually the length is greater than, if it's not equal to, because right now the length, we know that a valid email address, the normal length will be this and this here. So right now the length is what? 2 here. So we simply check if the length is greater than 2. But how do we know? Let's say the user types in this at mail.google.com. Now we don't know that this is actually a wrong email address. Why? Let's look at this. Let's say at whatever. Let's just split this first. Let's make some mistakes here and let's look at this. Let's say the user provides something else or a space within the email. like this. And now, as you can see right here, okay, sorry, not this. So right now we get 3 different letters, characters, 1 and a space, then 3. So we simply know that what the user types in is wrong. Then we return false to stop the operation here, and we do similar stuff here behind the scene. So we simply check for the domain parts, then we also check for the address. If the address is greater than 255, because we know that a normal email address, a normal human being having a normal email address could be 10, because you can't simply tell me that this is actually your email address at mail.com. You can't tell me this is not actually a valid email address, this is actually a scam. So we can simply test that. We simply get the address length. We check if actually the address length is greater than 64. So if it's greater than 64, we simply return false. Else, if the address is greater than 255, sorry, if it's less than 64 and greater than 255, we return false. Then we check the domain part. The domain part actually comes with that mail.com here. So with this mail.com, we split it by the dot symbol here. Sorry, what is this? Split? No, sorry, not split. So we split it, and this actually provides the mail and the this internet protocol stuff like this. We provide the address and some other stuff. So we simply check the domain parts. When we check the domain part, we simply loop through the domain and check if actually the part is greater than 63. Else we return false, and the rest we simply test for this. We test the email for this regular expression here. If this regular expression returns true, we know that the email is valid. Else it returns false, and we know that what the email is invalid. That's why we are doing all this here. So let's move on. So we simply check that, and we simply do all this stuff behind the scenes here. Then we send this data to the backend, and the backend is actually running on the Node.js. So the backend simply takes in these 2 fields, takes in the email and password field here. The email and password field is actually contained within this object here. The object contains the key value pair here. The key is actually the email, and the value is actually the email address. The key of this second object is actually what? Password, and the value is actually the password for this application here. Then we simply run an asynchronous function. The asynchronous function here takes up the API route. The API route for this application are defined here. So look at this. This particular file contains every API route we need to make from our client to the backend here. So we have the user auth, the admin auth, the login, and so many other stuff here. So let's look at the login here. The login is taken from the protocol, which is like the HTTPs and HTTP, but in our case it's actually called HTTP because this is actually a local protocol. So we simply say HTTP/localhost 5000 because this is actually the port in which our Node.js application is running on. The port is running on 5000 here. Bring on. So the port is running on 5000 here. Bring on. The port is running on 5000 here /API/alt/users and /login here, and we can simply get this particular piece of authentication ports from our backend here. I want to show you guys that. So when we make the request to the backend here, we simply send some other configuration here. For example, we send the method. What method do we need to make use of? So simply, let's look at that. Where in API design, I don't know how to shift this. Let's shift this below. Right now, our backend is running somewhere else. It's running on the cloud. Let's say this is actually our backend here, and this is actually our clients. What is this? I can't really shift this. Okay, so this is our client here. Let's say this is our backend and our client here. Our API sits in the middle. So when our client makes use both makes a request to the server. It sends this through an API route here, which is declared also in the server. The API middleman, because this API stands as a middleman between these two applications here. So it simply sends the request to the backend. The backend then what validates that input, those requests, to make sure those requests are valid. So let's look at the backend first of all. So let's move into routes, the host route. So let's look at the login route for this. So this is the login user here. My VS Code is actually hanging. So let's just give it some time to load. So we simply check for the logins. So we check this. We simply make use of router.posts. By the way, you might not understand all what you see here, but just get the concept behind this, because I can't go on to explain all this stuff for you guys to see. So we simply make use of router. This router is coming from a library called Express.js here. So let's look at this. The Express.js is actually a Node.js framework for building web application faster. So you can see it says what Express fast on opinionated minimalistic web framework for Node.js. So it enables us develops API faster. So if you're asking what is an API, actually an API is actually a gateway for two parties to communicate together. So normally when you want your client to communicate with the backend, you need to make use of an API. So let's look at this. I'm going to copy this link for you guys to check it out also. So let's look at what's an API. API, so you can get this one. It says what? An API is an acronym for Application Programming Interface, which is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other. In this case, we are making use of the server and the clients. So each time you use an app like Facebook, Facebook would sends an instant message or check the weather on your phone. You are basically making use of an API. So what this channel is stating is that let's look at Facebook, for example, or let's look at this browser, for example. So let's look at this. I simply search all this this particular string on the Google search engine here. What Google does is that as soon as I click enter, it takes this piece of character, sends it through some API. Let's look at this. If we go into the DevTools, I'm going to the network tab here. So each time I click on, let's look for an API now. So you can see here, it sends it through. Let's look at this query parameter headers. So let's look at it. Let's look at the headers here. So right now, Google simply take this particular piece of character, send this through this endpoint within all this stuff, and make use of a request called get here. The get request, I want to show you what does that in this seconds. But what Google does is that it sends this piece of character, which we are actually searching for, through an API gateway set up within their own backend here. So you simply take this piece of character, send it through an API gateway to their server. Then the server returns a valid result here, and the result is being shown within the browser here. So that's the anatomy of an API. If you need more explanation on this, you can simply make the research on your own. So let's look at it also. So I was talking about API endpoint. Let's look at this API API method here. So let's look at this. Let's look at internet. I'm not sure what piece of character I need to search. Let's look at network methods. Network HTTP. Sorry, HTTP methods. Sorry, this is what I'm actually looking for. So let's look at these. So it says HTTP defines a set of request methods to indicate the desired action to be performed for a given resources. Although they can also be nouns, these request methods are sometimes referred to as HTTP verbs. Each of them implements a different semantic, but some common features are shared by a group of them. Request method can be saved in them potent or cacheable. For example, we have the get request. The get method request a representation of the specified resources. Request using get should only retrieve data. So what this get request simply means is that when you want to get only, as name implies, get, when you want to retrieve or get any method or data from the internet, you make use of what get request. The post request, as name also implies, when you want to send some data to some specific endpoint or resources, you simply make use of the post HTTP method here. So I want to leave this link also down for you guys to go through it on your own. So what this client app does is that it sends this through an API method. Then the backend simply validates those requests and then sends it back through that same API to the what client here. So that's how we do make use of to and fro of sending requests between these two third parties, which is the client and the app. Sorry, the client and the server here. So we simply make use of those requests here, and we simply get those requests using posts. As you can see, we make use of post requests, and the reason why we make use of post requests is that we are sending some data, and those data are either actually the emails and their password, and the emails and their password are actually sent using those API endpoints I showed you guys here. So we make use of this API endpoints here, all this stuff here. We make use of HTTP/locals 5000 API auth and users. So when we get those requests, we simply make use of this function here, this users logged in. So let's look at this method here. So the user logged in method simply checks if actually there is a data sent within this parameter here. So if this data exists and the length is greater than 0, because normally if the user didn't provide any data, we know that what the length is equal to 0. But if they provide data, the length of the data would be greater than 0. So we simply validate it here. Then if the email and the password is what undefined, we simply send an error to the user here. Then we do some other validation stuff. Then we simply make use of what we call SQL queries here. So if all this stuff returns true, that is the operations went well, we simply execute this particular piece of code below here. So we make use of an SQL query called select all from users where mail is equal to 1. So this is actually a PostgreSQL syntax here. So if you don't know SQL, I really need you guys to go ahead and check it. Then we simply make use of a library called Node.Postgres here. Let me close this down. Let's look for Node.Postgres. Node.Postgres. So this particular library enables us to work with PostgreSQL, which is this database using our Node.js application here. So we simply make use of this library in working with PostgreSQL. As you can see here, they define all what you need to know for you to work with PostgreSQL using Node.js. So let's copy out this link for you guys to check it through. So I'm leaving all this so you guys can make a reference to it. So we simply get the SQL query and the data which was sent from the client here, and then we simply check. We simply say, hey, I need to check some database stuff here. So let's look at this. We are saying select all from users. Where is this users coming from? This users right here is actually our table defined in our database. Remember, I dropped an SQL file here. This SQL file contains the database name. Number one, this database here contains this tables, the users tables, the cases table, the suspect table, and so many other stuff here. So we simply check if actually an email, a record within this table matches the one sent from this particular app here. So let's look at this. So we simply check it if a field is found within this table here, and when we make use of this, we simply check that. Well, when we check a field containing a mail here, we make use. Sorry, I'm being disturbed right there. So just give me some time. Let me just make some sense. So welcome back. Sorry for those disturbance. So like I was saying before, I said what we need to do right now is that once the user sends in an email address from the client app to this server, what the server does is that it actually gets that email address. Then we simply check if actually that email exists within our database table called in our table called users. So the table called users contains a field called mail here. Let's look at this. So it contains a field called what? Mail, or a column rather called mail. So we simply check that. We simply what is this? Why is it closing up? Let's look at the alt. So we simply check for a field called mail address. Then this particular stuff verifies it. If an error occurs, we simply send the error to the client. Then we simply check if actually the row count is equal to 0. Let me tell you something. When this result, this parameter here, this result argument or parameter contains the information gotten when this query runs successfully here. So when this query runs successfully, we simply check if all this stuff actually present here. Then if they are present, it returns, it adds the data gotten when you execute this query, and this data contains different information. It contains the row count, it contains the rows, and so many other stuff here. So we simply check if actually the row count is equal to 0. Is equal to 0 means that no user was found within this table, or no matching data was found within this table here. If the row count is greater than 1 or greater than 0, you know that what the user or a data already exists within this table. Then if no users was if no user was found, we simply send this particular piece of data to the client here, saying what officer with that email don't exist here. So let's look at this. So let's say I put in Peter 2. Now this Peter 2 is not actually found in our database here. So when I send this, it says what officer with that email doesn't exist. That is why all this stuff are happening. I will make it a 404. So a 404 here simply is actually means not found. So this is actually a status code here. So let's look. If you have your internet continue, you can simply search for what HTTP. Search for HTTP status codes here. We have so many HTTP status code. Like for example, we have the not found, server error, unauthorized, and so many other stuff within it. So all this stuff, but when I make use of this number, they're simply telling you to, they're simply saying this request or this data was not found here in the table. Then if the user sends in the request, we see if this data was found in the table, we go ahead to the next operation. The next operation was to validate the user request here. So we simply do what? We simply make use of a library called Bcrypt.js. Bcrypt.js is actually a library for dealing with cryptographic signature, like hashing password and decrypt and comparing password here. So the library makes use of a method called compare hash. The compare hash takes in a string and a hashed cryptographic text here. The cryptographic text is actually used when the user gets signed in. So let me show you what I mean here. So if I say select hash from users, and by the way, this is actually the PostgreSQL database column here. So what it does is that it simply gives me all this hash here. So this is actually the user's password. And the reason why you are seeing all this is that if you are saying, but this is not actually the password which was sent. Yes, when your password reaches the server, we can't actually store those plain text there. Like we can't store your password in plain text, but rather we need to hash that particular piece of password. When we hash it, we simply store it in our database. Then when the user logins again, we simply get this hash password or any of them relating to the user who got registered. So we simply get this hash password. Then we compare it along with this the password which was sent from the user. But in this case, it's actually 1 to 34 which was sent from the client. So we compare the password followed by the hash password coming from our database. If this stuff return false, and we know that the user has a wrong password, then we simply send this stuff saying 400. 400 simply means bad request. So the user makes a bad request from the client to the server. And let's look at that. So if I put in a correct email address but a wrong password here, it says what password given is what incorrect. And if you look at the terminal, it says what it says bad request. So that this request which the user make use of is actually known as what a bad request here. So hope you guys understand that. Then what we need to do right now, we need to make use of what we call we simply get those pieces of data from the server. Then we make use of what we call JWT. JWT is responsible for making use of signing a token. So we make use of that piece of library when we want to authorize a piece of user or a particular user to our application. So we simply get this payload, then sends this to the client. The client before sending to the client, we simply create a token from this payload here. So this payload contains the user ID, the type, the role, the rank, and the status of the user. All this stuff are coming from the database here. So we simply get all this stuff. Then we simply create a token from this payload here. So we generate a refresh token from this payload. Then once we generate a refresh token from this payload, we simply send that refresh token to the client. And by the way, this name is wrong because normally a refresh token has a longer period of time here. So let me show you what this stuff does. So this generate refresh token actually takes in a payload. Then we make use of a library called JWT. JWT simply signs the payload along with a secret or a public key, which is actually found in our .env file or the environmental database file. So we simply make use of this token here when signing a token. We make use of this secret, when signing a token, and we'll make use of this secret. JWT verifies those signature each time a user makes request from the client to this server here. So I hope you guys get that. Then we simply send those data. We simply send the token into our client app, and then when this piece of data reaches the client here, let's see what happens here. So when we get the data from the server to the client, let's look at what's happened. So this is it here. We make use of when we get this data, we simply decode that piece of token. Then we actually we save it into the local storage. And the reason why we are saving into the local storage is that we want to make this data persistent, because each time we make requests from the server, from a client to the server, we want to send those information. We want to send the token in order for the server to verify who we are. So we simply store it in our browser local storage here. So let me show you where this is here. So the browser local storage here. So let me sign in. So as you can see here, this local storage here is actually empty here. So it's like a temporary local storage for the browser here. So this is actually empty. It takes in a key value pair, but right now they are empty. But let's watch what happens. 1 2 3 4. So now we are logged in. But let's look at what happens within the local storage. Right now we see data, the crime tracker and the visible tutorial. So this visible tutorial is responsible for this stuff here, which you see here. So this crime tracker simply the browser now has a token which you can use when making requests each time we want to get some piece of data here. So we make use of this. We make use of this token here. So this is actually the token generated from a library called JWT. So I'm going to leave that with you, jwt.io here. Oh, I'm disconnected. Let me just refresh my phone, or reboot my phone. Sorry, because my phone has a problem. But meanwhile, I'm going to show you what that particular piece of library does. So this is actually the token. In this way, we are simply making it harder for any user or any hacker to hack into our application here. So that's why we are doing this. So let's just hold on a bit. So when we install this stuff in the within the browser here, we simply redirect the user to the dashboard here. So we simply redirect the user from the client from the login page to where to the dashboard based on their ID here. So that's what goes on within this applications. Then when we move into our dashboard here, we simply shows this piece of data here. We simply shows this piece of tutorial here for the user to know. So that's that for the authentication from both the client and the server here. So each time we make a request from the client and to the server, we simply send those tokens in order for the browser, in order for the server to know who we are. So let's look at the assign case here. So right now the assign case is here. When we make use of assign cases, we simply generate a piece of code or a case ID. When we generate this, or let me move on this. Let's copy out this link right here. So this is actually the link for the JWT here. I'm going to store this link below. So you can see, this web took is an open industry standard RFC method for representing claims securely between two parties. JWT.io allows you to decode, verify, and generate JWT just like I've shown you below. So this is actually the token which we store in our client app here. So the token contains different parts. It contains the header, the payload or the data, and the algorithm which was used. So the header contains the algorithm and the token type here. The payload contains the user payload here, which you can see here. But in our case, it would be the ID, the name, and some other stuff. Then this last payload, this last type here contains the verified signature, which JWT used in verifying in verifying who we are when we send the request from the clients to the server here. So let's look at the assign cases here. So the way we did assign cases work is that each time the user generates a token here, when we click on this, we are calling a function here. So let me show you what this function does. So when we move into a component called cases here, then let's look at these cases here. So let's go up to where we have assign cases here. So yeah, add cases here. So let's look at this. We simply make use of what we simply call this function. So each time the user clicks on this button here, call this function here to generate the code here. The generate the code is actually does a simple stuff here. Number one, it takes in different random numbers. It generates different random numbers based on the length here, based on the length given. For example, the length is what 5 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it generates a random number based on this array here. So it makes use of a JavaScript math operator called math.random, which takes in a piece of length and generates different random numbers here. So let's look at that. Or you can simply go ahead and research about it. Math.random. It says the math.random function returns a floating point pseudo random number in range 0 to less than 1. So each time we call this, it simply generates different random number, as you can see here. All this stuff here. But this is not actually what we are doing. What we are doing in this case is that we are making a for loop. The for loop takes in the length. The length is what is from 1 to 10, or sorry, from 0 to 10. Then it actually generates each of those lengths, each of the number given based on the length. So if the length here is 5, it generates 5 different random numbers. If the length here is 100, it generates 100 different random numbers here. And that's why we are specifying the length here 5. So we want to generate 5 lengths, 5 random numbers. Sorry, random numbers having a length 5 here. So when we do this, we are setting the code here. So as set code actually comes in handy with what we call state management within React. So React is actually a stateful management application here. So you can go ahead and search. Let me just copy this link for you guys to use. So React comes with what we call state management. React state management. So it says let's look at these. I was trying to do this. Let's says React developers create and maintain states. They want state management to be simple, extendable, and atomic. React as this is not what I want, but in a layman's terms, what state means is just data, controlling how data is being used within your application. So by default, vanilla JavaScript or the normal JavaScript is stateless. So in React, when React was created, making use of JavaScript code, we can simply add a state management feature to our application, which actually makes a piece of data stateful. So you can go ahead and research about that. But meanwhile, we simply generate the code, we put in the case name, we select the officer ID based on those who are registered as an officer. Then we simply add in the notes, and then we add the case. When we add the case, we're also making a request from the client to the server here. So we simply add the case. Let's look at this. And by the way, how we got this data is that we are simply fetching all users based on who are registered as an officer. So we simply get those data and populate it within the select case here. So this is what we populate all users here. So that's it. Let's look at how we send the data. So when we click on add case here, this add case function here gets executed. First of all, it checks if actually the code is empty. If it's empty, we simply throw an error saying code can't be empty. If the officer ID is empty, so we simply say well, officer ID can be empty and all this other stuff. Then we send this piece of data from the client to the server here. So we simply send this data using a method called post and adding an additional headers called authorization. If this authorization isn't present, the server won't know who we are, and it's going to return a bad message or an error saying authorization is what needed. So we simply pass the refresh token, which is stored in our database, so which is stored in the browser local storage. Then we send it from the client to the server side here. So we simply get that from this from the client to this place here, which is this here. We simply get those data, then validate it. We simply check if actually that user sending the data exists within our database. If they don't exist, we simply throw an error saying what fail to add user officer ID doesn't exist. Else, if they exist, we simply insert all this data into our database, making use of the insert SQL statement here. So you guys can go ahead and check that out for you to know for that. Once this data gets inserted into our database, we simply send a message saying what case added successfully. So let's look at that. This is what case added successfully here. That's what is going on behind the scene here. Hope you guys understand that. If you don't understand that, you can simply ask some questions from the chat here. So right now I'm getting tired, but let's move ahead. The view case here. So all this stuff are just like, let's look at how they are making use of what we call CRUD operation here. So we simply like you said, this is actually not a crime tracker, but instead it's what we call a crime record system. So it simply keep record of each crime committed by a user. It takes in the user, so it takes in the suspects. We can add suspects and all that stuff here. So when we add suspects here, we simply insert it into the suspect table in our database here. So we simply insert all this stuff within our database here. So let's look at all this same feature, all these things you see me doing here. I actually have actually what we call CRUD operation here. So if I search on CRUD operation, this simply means in computer programming, create, read, update, and delete are the four basic operations of a persistent storage. CRUD is also sometimes used to describe user interface convention that facilitates viewing, searching, changing information, and using computer-based forms and reports here. So this is what all this stuff does. But I'm going to leave it to tutorial for you guys to check out on how to implement that yourself. So I'm going to leave this tutorial out for you guys to check. Let's look at this. Not this one. React and Node.js. So let's look at. I'm just looking for easy one for you guys to use. Let's look at this. Let's copy the link. I'm gonna leave this for you guys. So you guys can go ahead and check that out in your time. Then let's look at evidence. Oh, sorry. So the way evidence works is that we simply select a case ID. All this case ID are the one which was created from this hard case here. All this case stuff here. This is actually what is being created here. So we simply select each of this case ID which was created, and each of this case ID has an evidence which was added from a particular officer to a specific case ID here. So the case ID table, let's look at what goes in within the case ID table here. So we simply let's look at add case, so or add evidence. So let's look at add evidence. So simply gets those data coming in from this client, then it inserts those data within the evidence table where the case ID, where what the case ID is actually, sorry, not this, Okay, yeah, where this case ID is present here, so we are inserting this evidence based on what the case ID which was sent from the client to the server. Then how do we get this evidence based on the case ID? We make use of a function what called get evidence. This get evidence takes in the case ID here. So when we select a particular case here, it simply queries the database based on what the case ID here. So let's look at that. So this is it here. We simply select evidence. We select all this stuff from two different tables, from the evidence table and the suspect table. And the reason why this is possible is that these two tables have something in relation here. So they have something related to each other. And what do they have? Number one, they have the case ID. So what the case ID and the evidence will has something related. They have the user ID and the case user ID. So these two column actually present within this two table here. That's the reason why I did that. So we are selecting all this data from this two table, but we are selecting it from evidence, inner join. They were joining this evidence to this table here. Then based on what the ID and the evidence, the suspect ID, where the evidence of case ID is equal to 1. This case ID is what we are passing in here from this piece of drop down here. So when we click on this stuff here, we simply select evidence based on the case ID which was sent. So if no data was found, we simply display something else. It says what? No evidence found for that case here. So which means no evidence has been added for this case of 84077 here. That's what that stuff does. And let me show you. I'm going to look at, open up a link for you guys to look on SQL join. So let's look at them. I'm going to leave this. So this is what we do. Inner join. We have the inner join, left join, right join, and so many other stuff here. So I'll leave this link for you guys to go through it on your own. Right now I can't really go all this stuff one by one, because right now I'm actually tired. I've been doing some stuff since morning up to this hour. So let's go ahead. Let's move ahead to this. Then I've explained all this, but how do we secure each of this data here? Let's look at something else. Right now it's saying action none, and the reason why we did this is that each time an officer added a particular piece of evidence to the database, we don't want to delete. We don't want other officer to delete this piece of information if they were not the one who added it. So we simply check if the officer ID matches the one who is logged in. So once the officer is logged in, we have an ID here. This is the ID here. So we simply check if actually this ID matches the one which is logged in, because we know that this ID doesn't match the one which is logged in. So if it doesn't match, we simply will display what none here, which means officer can't delete other officer data here. But what if we log in as something else, as someone else? So let's log in as let's see what we have in our database here. Select let's say officer. Let's select mail from users where user ID is equals to this. Yes, not this actually. Let's copy this. The reason why I'm doing this is just that I want to log in as this particular user. So right now we have the user as ryan@mail.com. So let's copy out this and log in as this user somewhere else. So let's look at this local host 3000. Then go into the login page and log in as that user. And let's look at the evidence. Let's go ahead through this tutorial and do some other stuff. Evidence here. So let's select this particular case ID. As you can see, it shows what the action here. So as you can see right here, this action was actually shown in this user. Why? Because it was actually this user who added this evidence. So we don't allow other users. We don't allow other officers to delete or edit other officers' evidence which wasn't added by them here. So that's why we showed none. If actually it wasn't the officer who added this piece of evidence here. So let's look at how we edit a particular piece of evidence here. So to edit, simply when we click on this, we show what the update evidence table here, which contains the case, the evidence name, the suspect name, and some other stuff here, which we do. So when we click on this, and we add this stuff here, it simply updates the evidence. This evidence can't be found for this user. So let's look at this. So let's look at the 091. Because let's use the 6106 and added evidence. It can't be empty. I think something is definitely wrong. Let me just reload the page and go into piece of evidence here, then select something is wrong. I don't know. Let's look at the request. Sorry about the noise in the background. Okay, sorry, it's coming from this piece of client here. It's coming from here. So let's look at the client app and see what's going on. This evidence here. So we move into the evidence table here. So not here, rather here. So this update evidence here. So let me see what we did here. So when we click on when we click on this update evidence here, this piece of function gets executed here. This update evidence here gets executed here. So let's see what's happening. So let's look at this. Let me toggle this off. Let's see if actually this evidence is present. Let's reload this page. So if something didn't work in you guys' form, just simply reload the page and see what's happening, because sometimes React server takes so much time to update the DOM itself. So let's just give it. Let me just pause this out and come back when this page is. So sorry about that. I was actually referencing the wrong table. So this is not the evidence table. This was actually the notes table here, but rather this was the evidence table here. We can simply change it and update the evidence here. This suspect name can't be empty. So let's suspect this particular suspect name here. Update it. Zero evidence updated successfully here. So what we did is that we simply send this request from the client to the server here based on the method called put. So put, this method called put is actually used when updating, or sorry, when to update a piece of data from a server here. So you guys go ahead and check out those links I sent based on this status code here. So you can simply check different status code here. Sorry, not status code, but rather HTTP method here. So put is being used to update a piece of the client to the server here. You send the user ID, the case ID, the suspect name, the evidence, and the evidence ID, then the suspect ID here. Then we then send this data here. Then if something went wrong, we simply show an error. Else we display a message saying what evidence updated successfully. So that's what goes on within this. And if we go into the server, you can simply check out what's going on also. So let's look at updates. So edit here, we simply get all this data: user ID, case ID, evidence ID, suspect name, suspect ID, evidence, note, and some other stuff. Then we simply select all from users where user ID is equals to what? 1. And the reason why we are doing this is that we don't allow a non-officer to update a piece of evidence which wasn't added by him. So we simply check if actually that user exists. If it doesn't exist, we simply send a message saying what? Fail to add evidence 404, which is not found. Then we destructure those data coming in from the payload. This is actually the evidence which was coming in from the payload here. We simply destructure it using JavaScript destructuring method here. And what I mean by destructuring, you can search it out. JavaScript destructuring. So it says, let's look at this. It says what? Destructuring in JavaScript expression that is a JavaScript expression that allows us to extract data from arrays, objects, and map and set them to a new distinct variables here. So we simply will extract the data out coming in from this payload. Normally, the payload would have been like this. The payload would have been like this. Sorry, not this. Would have been this. Would have been let's say name.tune. And let us set it to a variable here. Let name is equal to .tune. But we don't want to access it like this name to access instead we simply want to access by their own name. So let's just change it. Let's just change something here. Let's say name, user name here, and let's say age should be 23. Then we can simply say const name and not name, name, then age. So we are simply extracting this data out. So what we're doing now is that we are going to extract this data out from this object here and simply set it to a new one here. Now we simply log out uname, we get what? .tune. We log out age here, we get what? .tune. So in this way, instead of us doing name username or name.age, we simply reference it by their own name, by their own properties itself. So this is what we call destructuring in JavaScript here. So we simply destructure this out. Then what we did is that we check if that case which the user is trying to add exists. If it doesn't exist, we simply say what? Failed to update suspect. Case does not exist. Then we throw what? 404 error here. Then we check if the suspect also exists. All these checks we are doing right now. We check 1, 2, 3, 4, then all this stuff. So we simply do a 4 checks. We simply check 4 times in order to make sure the system is much more secure. So all these checks we are doing is to prevent a malicious user from editing or updating a record which wasn't added by him or her. So if all this stuff went well, we simply do what? Update the table using the update SQL table here. So you can simply go and check that out. Update SQL statement here. So I want to copy all this and save it as the link here. Then after updating, if there is an error, we simply send the error to the client. If there's no error, we send a 200 response. The 200 response simply means okay or what? Successful. So we simply say evidence updated successfully. So that's what we are doing right here. Update evidence, we get evidence updated what? Successfully here. So I think this is it. And delete, we simply make use of what? The delete SQL query to delete a particular data from the database here. Then we make use of some other stuff also here. So let's say we want to delete this, we simply check on, you say what evidence deleted successfully. So we simply delete that evidence which was added here. So and now we have no evidence here. So that's it for that. Let's look at the .env file. So the .env file contains some information which we don't want to expose to our user or to a user using this code here. So if you are using this particular code here and you are trying to deploy it to the internet, you must put some environmental variables, or this env simply means environmental variables, and I explained it here in the documentation here, so you guys can make reference to that. So I explained it here. Let's look at this .env file. So it says what? This file contains some secret information we don't want to make visible to other users apart from us. Env simply means environmental variables here. So they actually enables you hide some secret information. Right now, this is actually something we want to exploit, because if a particular malicious user gets hand with this secret here, they can simply make use of this secret information in what? Attacking our attacking this system here. So that's why we are doing this. And when we push this code to GitHub simply will ignore this particular file here, because we want to upload this to some to our code where people can see and make use of it. So I think that's that for that. We also declare this. So let's look at the API routes here. So this same API routes are actually what was declared also in our clients here, but in this case we didn't make use of the protocol in this instance here. So we just make use of this /API/edit stuff, all this stuff. All this API actually being used in this application here. So but we clear all evidence. We go in here. This clear all evidence, and when we click on it, it says well, okay, clear all. It says only admin has permissions. And the reason why I did that is that we don't want to allow an officer to clear all evidence which was added by all other officers. This operation can only be done by only the admin, and that's the reason why I did that here. So other API endpoints here. Then we make use of what the Postman API is. So the Postman API, this file, the reason why I included this file is that in case you want to test each of this API here, you can simply make use of this app called Postman here. So I want to show you what the app does here. Postman.com here. So let's look at this particular app here. It says what? So this is the app here. So in case you want to test this app, you can simply drag this piece of JSON file here into this app interface here. Then all this stuff will show here. All these endpoints here will actually show. All these API endpoints which you're seeing here will get shown up within the database here. So within this app here, so you guys can check it out. Then let's look at the app.js. The app.js is actually the root to this server file, and the reason why is that when we start up our Node.js app here, so when we we want to execute our server here. But when we run node followed by an app name, we simply want to run a single app here. So a single file here. The single file can then run other multiple app file instance here. So we simply make use of this particular file to run to spin up our server on a particular port called 5000 here. So we simply start the app on a 5000 here. Then we call all this stuff here. So all these things which you are seeing here are called middlewares. So in Express.js, middlewares are actually something you don't know, or a function or a piece of logic you want to get called or you want to execute once the user makes a request. So each time a user makes a request to a particular piece of endpoints from the client to his server, we call each of these middleware here. We can also bind middleware. We can bind method to a piece of middleware using Express.js here. So you can go ahead and check that out from the link I dropped down below. Then make use of .env. So we imported .env. The .env allows us to work with environmental variables within our Node.js application. Then we imported all this stuff from the globals here. Then body parser enables us works with uploading or sending piece of data here. So it enables us send JSON data or XML data from the clients. And the reason why is that each time we make a request, without this package here, we won't be able to make send any data from the client to his server. And then the cause module enables us to work with cross-origin resource sharing. So normally, when an application requests an information aside from its domain, the browser simply stop that request. It shows an error to the user. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say I want to make use of this endpoint, and so I don't know if this will work, but let me just try it and show you guys what I mean. So let's look at fetch. So this is it. It's worked. So this is it. So this particular app is trying to make requests outside of a domain which wasn't outside of this domain here, which is localhost 3000. When the browser sees this, the browser immediately stop that piece of request going in and out. So it simply throws a cross origin, says what access to fetch at this particular place from the origin of what localhost 3000 has been blocked by a cause policy. No access control and no origin header is presented on the request resources. If an opaque response serves your needs, set the request mode to no cause to fetch the resource with cause disabled there. So this middleware prevents this cause package here, prevent this from happening here. So it prevents this error from showing up within the server here, sorry, within the client here. And let me show you the middleware cross npm here. So this is what is going on behind the scene here. So this package is responsible for stopping that piece of error showing up here, and they actually show you up it shows how to make use of it using Express.js here or a Node.js application here. So I'm going to leave this link for you guys to go through it on your own. So and then we simply make use of this stuff, and the reason why I did that is that when the user simply visits localhost 5000, we don't want to show a blank page. Instead, we want to show an information here. So let's say I visit localhost 5000 on a specific route here. It shows cannot get this endpoint, but we don't want to display this. Instead, we want to display a particular piece of file here. So it shows this piece of file here, and this information is coming in from this file here, package.json. So all this stuff you see here, they're coming in as a response from this server here. So when we make use of so how this stuff works is that when the user makes request to the home page, which is denoted as / we simply read a particular file here. The file is known as package.json. We make use of the file system module in Node.js, which enables us work with file within our Node.js application here. So in this case, we are reading from this particular piece of file. Then when we read this piece of file, we simply get the data returned. So when we read, this data coming in from this file is known as text or a string. And we can't simply send string. We want to send it as object from the server to the client. So we simply pass it as a JSON format. JSON in JavaScript is actually known as JavaScript syntax object notation. They allow you to specify what piece of data you want to send. It's actually an internet way of sending data from one party to another. So if you go ahead and search for JSON here, it shows what JavaScript object notation is a standard text-based format for representing structured data based on JavaScript syntax, JavaScript object syntax. It is commonly used for transmitting. So this is where the key point comes in. It says it is commonly used for transmitting data in a web application, e.g., sending some data from the server to the client, so it can be displayed on the web page or vice versa. So I want you guys to just go ahead and copy this link and view it up in your browser here, so to get more information about it. So we simply make use of this piece of data when sending in. So we simply convert it to normally. Let me show you guys what I mean. So let's say let.tune is equals to .tune is cool, right? If I look at the type of this type of .tune, what do we get? We get what? We get string as the result. But we don't want to send string to our clients. We want to send a data which the clients can actually pass, or which the clients can actually view in a well structured manner. Now let's look at this. If I just send out string to the clients, let's look at what the result would be. So let me reload the page now. So right now it's actually refreshing. Let's look at what the data would look like. So if I disable this extension here, so this is what will get shown within the browser here. But so we don't just send this within the browser. We want to send it in a way the clients can interpret it as an object here. So we simply pass it as an object, making use of the JSON.pass. So the JSON.pass method simply converts string to object here. So that's the reason why all this stuff is showing here as an object. So let's look at this here. So let's say I want to change this string from a string to object. We can simply use what? JSON.pass. So the pass function, your method takes in text as its argument. In this case, we pass in .tune. Okay, so simply this piece of data is actually not a valid object. So let's create a string now. A valid object as string here. So now this is actually a valid object which is in form of string here, right here. Then when we call JSON.pass, I think something is wrong. Let's look at. Let me just copy out this. Oh, what is wrong? I don't know what is wrong with this stuff. JSON.pass. It's too string fine. Okay, yeah. So I've seen what is wrong right here. So this is actually what this stuff is expecting quotes at the this backticks at the beginning of the string here. Is expecting this. So let's just put this sparse and put it as backticks here. Now let's look at this. something's really wrong. So let's just try this again. So let's just say name. Let's say name should be equal to this. This video here. Then let's call JSON. Let's pass name. Oh, something is really wrong. But anyway, what this stuff does is that it actually converts string to an object. So let's look at this. Let's look at JSON here. So as you can see here, it actually converts what object to what a string, or in vice versa, it converts string to what an object here. So it actually denotes shows some valid signature, some valid syntax which can be used to pass is JSON here. So let's look at this, and this is what I'm actually looking for. Let's copy this out. Right now, as you can see right here, that's converted this piece of string to what a valid object, age, car, name, and some other stuff here. So this is what JSON is being used for. So we simply don't want to send string or a text to our user. We want to send it in a valid format. We simply make use of what JSON pass, which passes the string as what an object. So hope you guys. Then lastly, how do we how do we start this server? Then we simply make use of this Express app. This app instance enables us to start this server at a given port here. So in this case, we simply specify the port, and this port, this stuff you are seeing here, this syntax you are seeing, we're simply checking if the process.env.port is available. If it's available, we want to make use of this. Else, even if it's not available, we simply make use of what? 5,000. So in a situation where you want to deploy this to the internet, this port would get the hosting provider will set an environmental variable port with their own port number, either port 8080 or port 3000 or some other ports. So this port will get replaced. This 5,000 port will get replaced by this particular piece of port here coming in here. So we simply start this server on a port 5,000, and when we start the server, we can actually view it here. So this is what was going on. We simply start the server as port 5,000 here. So this is actually what goes on when we simply run dev here, which is coming in from this file here, npm run dev. So this is dev and this is start here. So I wasn't able to get through everything deep down, but you guys can go ahead and research more and see some things yourself. You want to fully get convinced about this project and to defend it well. So that's it for that. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for listening. I'll be sending you this right now to you guys.